what did you fail to do on 2 of the 3 losses? You skipped steps. You didn't put the plan down in writing, which you had done for the prior like 30-some trades, which, by the way, he was winning over 80% of, guys, very consistently for weeks, not 90 maybe. So the first trade he doesn't put his plan down, what do you think happens? 40 pip loss. Yeah. And it happened again later. Then he had a trade. Now this is probably the one that I kind of think a lot of people don't think about. By the way, if you are going to long a higher low, here it is, but I can't long when the Bollinger look like that. This is something that is very compelling. And Oliver, I'm going to have to use this one. I hope you're okay with it over and over again, because this is an example of something that every trader needs to realize. Let's say you have, we'll use round numbers here, 2 40 pip wins in a row. And it's not that just that they're wins, but they're perfectly done trades. In other words, everything about the plan was solid, right? Just perfect. Okay. And let's say this is 1 hour, this is 2 hour, and on hour 3, okay, right? On hour 3, you take a 40 pip loss. Now, it's not the loss that concerns me, because that's going to happen, correct? But what I saw on his journal, and this is what sparked my interest, I don't remember the numbers, but let's just say you had planned, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll use these numbers on the right for the example. Let's say you had planned to short at 35.70, okay, on the euro, right? But that, in other words, the plan in the journal says 35.70, but the actual short was 35.45. Something wrong there? You think there's something wrong there? Is that close enough to the plan that, you know, that's a big difference, right? Something happened there. Would you agree? I mean, if you're shorting, you know, a couple pips off, that's just, nobody's perfect. But 30 something? Yes, correct. So and it happened on hour 3. So I'm like, what? And I talked to him, and well, no, it wasn't. In other words, price had come down. This is just for argument's sake, and let's just say he shorted like here instead of here. It was well before the pullback, Paul. And it was completely out of character for him, because I'm telling you what, you go back in Oliver's trading 3 weeks, and he's been a freaking machine of consistency. And I don't mean wins, even though the wins were there. I mean consistency in routine. Who else can attest to this? When you have a consistent routine, you do things exactly the same way every time. You do not deviate. You do not cut corners. You get very similar success percentages, right? Well, he kicked ass in layman's terms for the past few weeks. And it was from that consistency. Well, there was nothing about what I saw in the record of this trade looked like the same guy. However, these 2 trades did, and they were done the same day, 2 hours before. So I'm looking at it going, wow. So when I had my meeting with him, I'm like, dude, can you tell me, did something happen to your life in here? And Oliver, did something happen in between those 2 trades, if you don't mind? We don't need to know the specifics of it, but did something happen? Can you give it a general? He doesn't want to answer. He had an argument with somebody. Huh. Yeah. Guys, do you think that had an impact? Doesn't even matter what it's about. He had an argument with someone. Is that something that could bring in emotions, you think? Having an argument with anyone? Yeah. And this is important, because this happens to any trader. This emotions can control you and kill you. And the way I explained it to him was, imagine you're You might think, you get in an argument with a friend, a spouse, a girlfriend, whatever, and you have an argument, and you think, okay, I can control myself, right? Let me get back in the saddle, and I can control myself. We're good. And then you get in and get your butt kicked. It's kind of like drinking and driving. All right? You know that physically you can do the task, being drunk and getting in a car behind the wheel and driving, correct? But what you can't control is what that alcohol does to you. No matter how hard you try, that alcohol has an impact on you, right? Well, emotions have the exact same impact on you. You can't stop that. If the emotion's there, it's there. That's when you got to walk away. That's when you got to hand the keys to your friend. Same thing. Haven't you heard stories about people on Wall Street? They've learned hedge fund traders. They get in an argument with their wife. They just say frack, and they just cut out. They stop trading that day, or they don't go to work that day because they know from experience what that does, what that can mean, what kind of day they're about to have. And it can be the other way around too. You could have a serious windfall emotion, not just money, but something really good happened in your life that's got you just oozing emotion. Bad day to trade. Bad day to trade. I'm sure some of you can relate. You've got to be a machine, an absolute machine, a disciplined, very disciplined, very, fearless, not affected by anything. You can't have anything to deviate from that. I mean, that is really an imperative. Doesn't matter what system you use. Doesn't matter what market you trade. Okay? If emotion enters, it's going to sway you. If you had a let's say this here represents your mental state, okay? And this is this yellow here is, we'll call that the safe zone, and we'll use, I don't know, magenta. I don't have an orange. You need an orange on Camtasia. And then, of course, what do you think the next color is going to be? A red. I'm sure some of you know where I'm going with this. So now, what this means, and let's say your mental state, it's never a straight line, is it? Okay. What I mean in the yellow is you're cool, you're calm, collected, you're in control. Right? There's always going to be some level of emotion involved in your being, but it's so small of a trace amount that it's not going to affect you. Okay? Right? Well, so your normal sort of flow pattern on your brain is something like this while you're trading, right? It's okay. It's going to move around, and that's good. Would you agree? You're in control the whole time. Now, the purple is like a fringe. So let's say one day something happens. This is Oliver. He's in control. He had an argument. Well, something has put him in a place where he's borderline. The argument probably put him right in the red, right? Well, would you agree that at that point his mental state has changed, and what you're going to find is it's a lot easier to continue down that path any given day when you have that sort of beginning. So what I'm going to argue is that if you find that you've done something that has you entering, and it might not be an argument, it could be anything, like you slip and even make a mistake, like you don't cut a loss when you're supposed to. Maybe you get in early for fear of missing out, or maybe you accidentally get in too large of a lot size. In other words, things that happen like that maybe you didn't intend, but they happen. But what do? You instead of getting out of it immediately, you stare at it like, oh, well, I'll wait till it gets back to break even. You just open the door. And once you start breaking some rules, it's like a trade. Once it breaks out, it just goes. And if you don't stop right at that point, what kind of day do you usually end up having? Those are the days that you end up losing, 10% of your account because you were crazy, instead of realizing you've lost control and it's time to pull over, take a break, even if it's only for a few hours, but probably a day. Once you break out of that area, You can, if you get to the fringe and you quickly collect yourself, oh shit, I made a mistake, let me cut out of that. You can get yourself back in and get under control for the remainder of the day. But once you've done something that gets you into the mindset, oh, you've really kind of crossed the line, you're going to find it's a lot easier to keep crossing the line and get your get your butt handed to you and become liquidity in the market. Does anyone live through this one way or the other? And what kind of things could happen here in this red phase? I mean, that's where you'll get stuff like people adding to losers, denial, whatever. I mean, I've seen people who leave trades open for 2 weeks, even 2 months, for crying out loud, that should have been cut day one because they're just in denial. What are you doing? And of course, you can't trade normally after that. So I mean, your goal is to maintain yourself within this yellow zone at all times, and easier said than done. And your emotional state does have a humongous impact on your trading results, and don't think otherwise. So I hope you guys got something out of that. We just got our pullback on cable, and like I said, I mean, I expect